Hello, Professor Campbell. I'm sorry this took so long. I hope this will at least kind of give you an idea of what we were doing here in CCP US History at Northwest High School, both in the fall and in the spring. You can see that we are using Google Classroom. As you can see, it's kind of a district, I don't want to say policy, but kind of an expectation that we use this so that the students don't get confused on platforms. And having students kind of toggle back and forth. I think now that we are moving towards an online copy of the textbook, I think there will be a bigger push for us to use Sinclair's, My Sinclair and the eLearn and all that in either next year or the year following, because I think most of us are in agreement that switching everything over to Google is just an extra step that quite honestly could be handled very simply by explaining how to log into their Sinclair account. I'll keep you posted on that, but as usual, a public school moves at a glacial pace when it comes to curriculum. Anyway, the classwork is broken down into units. As you can see, they've been working on the different units of study, and this is for the entire year. I didn't bother having a version 1 and version 2. You can see that we have had a fairly big emphasis on things like reading primary sources, the Model of Christian Charity by Winthrop, the Albany Plan of Union we looked at. We looked at, of course, some textbook stuff comparing how it's presented in both the text that we had, and that's back when we had the hard copy, but I had them compare it with the AP and how things were presented in both textbooks to kind of look at the idea that your textbook needs a little bit more. There's a reason we do these outside readings so that there's more elaboration on kind of just what has been covered in great, kind of big picture conversation in a text. We're trying to get a little bit more kind of direct in our readings. We also listen to things like David McCullough's lecture on why we should study history, what it does for us, and needless to say, it's just every single unit has readings. This is where we did most of our quizzes, most of our tests, things like that, leading up to Unit 8, which was post-war America, which that was right before we had to give the U.S. History EOC. So I didn't have a lot of electronic stuff because they had a folder that they had to do a bunch of different review activities. They had a bracket activity, which has to do with March Madness, if you will, where they have to compare people from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and kind of decide who was more impactful to history. So that was a lot of what they had. As you can see, the bracket activity starts here and then it continues on into Unit 8. Once we were done with the EOC, the district mandates that if they take the EOC and score a certain amount that they are exempt from a final exam. I disagree with that because they're taking a college level course. So their high school grade stops then, but I always switch it up and they did a research paper. Because I have this firm belief that if you're going to go to college, you have to be able to prove that you can do some basic research and that you can elaborate with a certain amount of clarity on your analysis of what you research. So they were given this research paper broken down with due dates in two parts, if you will. They had to select a topic by April 30th. They had to do research note cards. So I actually went out and bought a bunch of index cards, gave them to them, and they had to do at least 50 note cards where they went through their sources, went through their websites, their books, what have you, and compile research that would help them to make their argument on whatever topic they chose. They had to assemble a works cited page by May 12th, and they had to submit a thesis by May 12th that this is what we're trying to prove. trying to make the argument that if you cannot tell me what you're trying to prove in a simple statement or two, then you're probably not going to be able to write a decent paper, because I'm sure a college professor like yourself has seen some decent and some really bad papers. So we're trying to make them a little bit more decent when they come to you, as opposed to what you probably have seen in years past. Then the second part of it was submitting a rough draft for peer editing. They got graded on how much help they were giving. I didn't worry so much about the grammar and the spelling, because that should be already taken care of. I don't know why the kids struggle with using spell check, struggle with using even things like Grammarly, just to kind of fix the obvious mistakes. But peer editing, they're getting graded on whether or not they're helping somebody and showing, hey, they're utilizing the research correctly, making the analysis correctly. And then, of course, they had to submit their final paper. They also had to do this planning sheet to start off, where they show, all right, these are the books that I've accrued, these are the possible topics I'm going to talk about. This was just something that they had to go to a library and work with a librarian. The librarian had to sign off that they had met with them, and I had called the local libraries to let them know that they were coming in. So all 12 students had to go down to the local library and kind of get used to the place. So again, it's just trying to get them to the mindset of, this is where you go when you need help. You don't just go on Google and type in random stuff. You actually go and find legitimate resources that are not Wikipedia, that are not a basic encyclopedia, but actually going and getting books by reputable authors and historians, and on whatever topic. So I had topics ranging from the second wave of feminism during the 1950s and 60s, to the rise of the railroads, to someone comparing the German and American air forces during World War II. They kind of all ran the gamut, because I basically said, I want you to find something that we've talked about this year and elaborate. Find something that you found interesting that maybe either we didn't get to cover as much, or you just find fascinating. So, again, we had a kid write about the interstate highway system. There was another student that, trying to remember off the top of my head here. Another student argued that James A. Garfield and William McKinley were killed because of doctor malfeasance. And they compared it to Reagan's situation. So again, they kind of ran the gamut of just odd, kind of weird stuff. But that was kind of the whole point, is I wanted you to find stuff that were outside the basic framework that we have talked about. And again, I had another person write a paper about all the conspiracy theories surrounding JFK's assassination, because she found it fascinating when we kind of talked about some of the issues with the Warren Report, and how people have kind of taken that to new heights of crazy, but she found that fascinating. So again, these 12 students that were in CCP, this is what their culminating project had to be, and this counted as their final exam for the course, which they all did very, very well. I was actually quite impressed. There were a few where the writing could certainly improve, but the peer editing certainly helped and made the papers at least readable. Again, that's just kind of the basic breakdown of how the Google Classroom looked. And of course, the stream here, we did a citation machine to try and help them understand what a works cited page should look like, because unfortunately a lot of the English teachers have gone away from the old school way of doing things that you and I learned, which is sad, but at the same time, I guess, use the technology that you have available. Our librarian at the school also helped them as well assemble their research, so it ended up being a pretty worthwhile thing. Anyway, that's kind of a generalized breakdown of how we handled the course. If you have any further questions, or if I can elaborate further to help solve any glaring needs, problems, whatever else, please feel free to reach out. Like I said, I will be petitioning our curriculum department to allow us to use the Sinclair platform next year again, because it used to be the old argument was, well, you have the textbook, it's fine, you can use Google Classroom. Well, now that the textbook is through the access through Sinclair, then there's really no point in us using Google Classroom anymore. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out. Appreciate you working with me and being patient with me as I tried to figure out how to do this stuff. So thanks a bunch. Have a great summer, and look forward to talking to you soon.